Well, hello, folks, and welcome to the Dieter Melhorn Fishing Podcast. I hope you're having a good day, whatever day it is that you happen to be listening to the show or watching it on YouTube. Today, we're going to talk about forward-facing sonar, Livescope, whatever you want to call it. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who's a regular viewer, regular watcher, regular listener, whatever you want to call yourself. Appreciate you coming by and checking out. And hey, if you're new, welcome to the show. I've got the video version on YouTube, the audio version on all the popular podcast platforms out there. So feel free to drop a comment. Let me know what you think about this particular topic, especially. I want to get some feedback from you guys. I'm going to make a few predictions, a few bold predictions on this, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. If you're listening to the audio version, go to my website, DieterMelhornFishing.com. And there's links, there's a contact section where you can leave a comment. I know it's hard to do it on the podcast version of it, but there's also links to my guide business. I'm a charter captain here in the Carolinas, and links to all the different platforms and the gear I use. So there's links down there for all of that kind of stuff. So appreciate you checking it out. But no, forward-facing sonar. If you're on YouTube and you listen to or watch any videos, one of the guys I suggest you check out is Randy Blockhead. He's got a YouTube channel, Intuitive Angling with Randy Blockhead. And he is a bass angler. And you're probably wondering, Dieter, you fish for catfish. You don't even fish for bass. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of what I watch on YouTube has nothing to do with fishing for catfish, to be perfectly honest. I've got a pretty wide and diverse range of stuff that I'm interested in fishing-wise. Even on the podcast version, when I'm flying somewhere and I listen to podcasts in the plane, usually it's like saltwater fly fishing, and I don't even fly fish. The reason being, I like getting different perspectives from people outside of my little world. I've got a very small little fishing community locally that I'm a part of. And even the catfish world is a very small little community. And it's good to open your mind to some other stuff just to see what's out there. Because I guarantee you one thing, if you got an open mind, you'll learn something. And Randy's got an interesting take on all of this. He's very opposed to it. And if you follow bass fishing at all, even loosely, and you tune in to a tournament that's on television or being live streamed now, it's way different than it was 10 years ago in what you're seeing and how you're seeing fishermen fish. And that's part of Randy's complaint with all of it. And there's some other things which we're going to get into. But there's a tie from all this to the world that we're in, fishing for catfish and other species of fish. So bear with me here. Give me a little bit of grace in going across all that stuff. Randy, I'm going to paraphrase his take on it, is that basically it starts to cross the line of being sporting. And what I mean by that, you've heard me talk about that in the catfish world before, in that, you know, we as sportsmen have to, if we're truly going to engage in a sporting means of harvesting a fish, the fish has to have a little more reasonable expectation of getting away. And I know this starts to get, touchy for some people in the catfish world, because there's a lot of limb liners, hand fishermen, jug fishermen, that kind of world out there. But in the other end of the spectrum, like the IGFA world records, the guys who are the fly fishermen fishing for marlin in these multi-million-dollar tournaments, there's a set of rules in place. And these rules kind of define what the sport is. And when you think about that, every sport has that. When you go play golf, there's a set of rules. You can only have so many clubs. You can only use a certain type of golf ball when you are in like the PGA standings. They could make golf balls that you could literally drive 600 yards, but they don't do that. Because there are some type of rules that define our sport. And that's kind of what Randy gets into in this, is that at some point, we have to say, stop. This is going to be decided by skill, not by, equipment and new technology and that kind of thing. And I get that. I get where he's going with that, because when you open something up, especially when it comes to wildlife, is that you've got a resource that, well, its life depends on how you treat it. And, it's a little different than golf and football and baseball. Really, nobody dies in that. Nobody dies in fishing, generally speaking, except for the animals that we're pursuing. So, and that's a resource that we should, as good stewards of the resource, try to protect. So, I say all this to say that using the forward-facing sonar starts to really stack the advantage in the direction of the angler. Because at this point, you are not mysteriously fishing for a fish you can't see. You have no idea it's there. You have no idea what it's doing. You can actually see what it's doing. It's not quite catching fish in a barrel, but it's almost like catching. You can literally sit there and see exactly what is going on with them and what they like, what they don't like, and make adjustments to that. And for the fisherman, especially a new fisherman, somebody that's new to the sport, it can maybe make it easier. Now, you still have to fish. I know the apologists for forward-facing sonar are going to jump and go, well, you still have to know how to fish. You do. Don't get me wrong. Forward-facing sonar is not a cure-all. It is not something that makes you a good fisherman automatically. You still have to know what you're doing. But all things being equal, a really good fisherman with this tool has an advantage, and it's a big increase in that advantage. So that's kind of the perspective on it. Now, how does it affect the fish? Well, in a lot of places, there's a lot of anglers making arguments that fish are being pressured more and more than they ever have. I'll give you a good example. 10 years ago, I'd always see bass fishermen out fishing, and I'm like, they're always beating the banks, running up and down the banks, casting around piers. And I talked to him at the dock, and I'm like, why are you not fishing out on them points out there in, 20, 30 feet of water? I said, we catch bass out there accidentally quite a bit, especially dragging rigs around with live bait on. Well, there's not really that many of them out there. Well, guess what? Now, with the, forward-facing sonar becoming so popular, they're finding out that there's a lot of fish out there because you can see these fish now. You can see how they're reacting to stuff. It's why you see a lot of guys fishing offshore now in these tournaments that didn't used to do that. So it's opening up a lot more pressure onto the fish. Along with catching a lot of fish comes some mortality, some delayed mortality even when you're releasing. But even outside of the bass world, you start going into the crappie fishing world. It's making it a lot easier for guys that are good crappie fishermen already to catch fish. And that is because, one, they can see the reaction to these fish, and two, they can pick out bigger fish. I've talked to a lot of guys that fish for crappie, and they say that now, if you're going to win a crappie tournament anywhere in the country, you better be fishing with some type of forward-facing sonar because of the advantage that it gives you in not just catching fish, but picking out the fish you want to fish for. It's so good that you can go, oh man, that dock's loaded with fish right there, but they're all half-pound, three-quarter-pound fish. I need some pound-and-a-halfers, and they can go pick those fish out. So it has an impact now, even for the recreational fishermen that, crappie in most places are catch and keep and kill. So there's not a lot of them getting thrown back if they're over the limit. So it has the potential to have an impact on the fish populations. So now a bunch of you are wondering, hey, you ain't said a thing about catfish. Here's my prediction, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I think at some point, as folks get better and better with this technology, you're going to see tournaments, more and more tournaments decided by using it. I will say this, most of the catfishing tournament world out there, and I can say this because I'm older, they're old. They're older. This technology is not something that the older folks really readily quickly embrace, mainly because it's like playing a video game. If you watch these bass tournaments on television or being live streamed, you'll see those guys standing there and they're staring down. They're actually staring at that screen on the front of their boat. A lot of these guys are packing $25,000-$30,000 worth of electronics on these boats now to be able to do this, to be able to compete. They've got stuff as big as my TV monitors here in my editing suite to look at so they can see what the fish are doing. And like I said, right now it's a young man's game. Some of the older guys have embraced it to a certain extent, but the younger generation is going to adapt to it a lot quicker. I will tell you that. They are a lot more adept at looking at this technology, using this type technology, having the hand-eye coordination to use it and to deal with it. And they have the patience for the computer, the tech stuff. So the thing right now is I think there's a lot of the older generations that's not totally utilizing it. But you're going to see, I think, some people that are going to use this, and they're going to have to change the way they're fishing. That's going to be the biggest thing. The old days of park and pray, anchoring a boat up, throwing some baits around the brush pile, it's not going to be as much of that. You're going to have a lot more hands on the rod, fishing for a fish versus putting baits out and hoping a fish comes by one of the 12 or 14, 16 rods you've got scattered around the boat. So I think it will come into play at some point. I don't know how close that is. I got a feeling there are some guys using it right now. You're probably not going to hear a lot out of them. You're not going to hear a lot of them sharing the information because I think it's something they're going to kind of keep those cars kind of close to their vest there. But people are going to figure it out. People are going to dial it in. You don't see me doing any videos. I don't have it yet. I've got a sonar unit on my Lund that is capable of running it. I haven't dove into it. Part of that is I'm very content with the way I fish. I like the way I fish, and I enjoy the way I fish. And I don't know that I would commit the time to it. And I think that's the thing that's going to separate the pack. It's going to take time to figure it out. Because like I said, with catching crappie and catching bass, it ain't easy just because you have the technology. You know, the guys that are fishing for catfish are going to have to go out there and strike out a bunch. They're going to have to figure out how to play the game. They're going to have to figure out how to work it. And as with a lot of things in the catfish world, most of us go out there and try something once or twice, usually on a day when the fish ain't biting our normal stuff, and we go, it sucks, I don't like it. What it's going to take is some people, and the ones that are going to make it are ones that stick with it, keep pressing, catch a fish and go, hey, I dialed something in there, let me try this and let me try that. It's going to take some time and some work. So I think that's going to be a younger person, a new person, a person that doesn't have a good track record of catching fish so far. So it'd be hard for me to go do it when I know I could be out drifting, dragging, anchored on some points, some structure, rock piles, going, man, I know I can catch fish that way. Taking a chance on doing this and going, man, I don't know what I'm doing. This ain't working. This ain't going to work. When, you take the time to do it right, get your rig set up and everything, there's going to be some people doing it. So mark my words, I think you're going to see it definitely within a decade. It's going to be dominating the catfish tournament world. And, I think in a shorter version, you're going to see some people doing it in the next 4 to 5 years. You're going to see it a lot more being utilized. Like I said, people are already using it now. I'm hearing the rumors and rumblings. Most people are not going to come out and talk about it. Like I said, they want to keep it kind of secret, hush-hush, where they're getting an advantage. I think there are some places where it will be a tremendous advantage. I think there are some places where it won't be an advantage, but people are going to dial in what works for a particular body of water and their style of fishing to make it work. So I want your feedback on this. Is this good or bad? Is this just another evolution? I wasn't around when the first sonar unit came out, but I'm sure people were going, oh, that's a bunch of voodoo magic that's making it not fair. And, it evolved from, a paper graph into something on a screen. And then we got structure scan. I don't know how long's that been, 10, 12 years ago. You started getting structure scan, sky scan, and, was this technology too much, or, is this just a progression? Is this just a logical progression? I think it will get better. We are not at the top of this stuff by any means. This is going to be to the point, I literally believe you're going to be able to tell a blue catfish from a channel catfish underwater on an electronic screen. And I think the same thing will be for bluegill and crappie. You'll be able to tell the difference in these fish. There'll be so much detail on what's going on. So let me know your thoughts on it. Is this good? Or is this bad? Or is it just a way of life? I don't think the bell can be unrung. I think there may be some bass tournaments that may ban it just as a PR move. But that may be difficult with a lot of these big tournaments being sponsored, major, series sponsors from, Lowrance, Humminbird, Garmin. They got a lot of money invested in it. It'll be interesting if the tournaments step up and they say, listen, you guys are pros. You're supposed to be the best in the business. You're not going to be able to use it. You use it on your fun time, use it recreationally. I don't think it'll ever get banned recreationally. I'm just going out on a limb right there and making that prediction too. While it may get banned in a tournament somewhere, I don't think it'll ever be banned recreationally by any, state governing body. I don't think that'll happen. I think there's too much money back in the electronics industry there for that to happen. But I can see it happen in some tournaments. Should it be banned in catfish tournaments? Give me your thoughts on that. Do you think catfish tournaments should eliminate forward-facing sonar from being used in catfish tournaments? It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to chew on. I like throwing this out there just to think about and give you guys something to think about. So appreciate you checking it out. We'll catch you on the water.